The moment I see where Zara is walking, three things become certain. My cover is blown, 6 years of running is over, and the most dangerous man in Los Angeles is about to meet his daughter. She's only moved 20 feet from the fountain where I left her, 20 feet across sun-warmed concrete, past a woman reading on a blanket, past a man walking a terrier that strains toward the grass, 20 feet toward a bench I hadn't clocked until right now, because the man sitting on it has been so still he registered as part of the landscape instead of the most dangerous variable in it. I notice him before I see his face. The quality of the stillness first. Nobody sits like that, like the world has to arrange itself around them rather than the reverse. Then the two men flanking him at distance, hands loose, watching every exit without appearing to watch anything. Then the casual way the nearest family has settled their picnic 20 feet away from that bench in every direction, as if a 10-foot buffer is just a coincidence of space. Bodies register danger before minds do. These people don't know why they moved. They just did. Zara is 5 steps away from him. I have maybe 40 seconds before she reaches that bench, maybe 30 after that before he looks up and sees me. 6 years later, a ghost with a forensic accounting certification and a secret she's been carrying like a stone in her chest. And when he looks up and sees Amara Washington standing in Griffith Park on a Tuesday morning in April, I don't know which version of Han Jae-won arrives. The man who once said, "I protect what's mine," or the man who made that sentence terrifying. If you've ever watched the two biggest mistakes of your life walking toward each other in slow motion, knowing the only thing that stops the collision is you standing up, crossing that distance, and surrendering everything you've built, what would you do? I had 40 seconds to decide. This is how I got here. 6 weeks earlier, Marcus Webb slid a manila folder across a conference table in a building that didn't officially exist on a street in Culver City. Hansung Group, he says, tapping the cover. Import security consulting, private asset protection, commercial real estate, 11 offices across the U.S., 3 in South Korea, clean on paper. I don't touch the folder. Then why am I here? Because the paper's too clean. He pushes it the last inch toward me. 3 auditors in 18 months. None finished the review. 2 quit. 1 had a breakdown. We need someone who can actually read what's in those books. I've heard versions of this pitch before. The case is always presented as financial complexity, a puzzle that requires a rare skill set, a specialist's eye, a woman who built her certification over 5 years specifically to read the kind of books most people don't survive reading. Marcus doesn't know that last part. He knows I'm good. He doesn't know why. He also doesn't know that the name Hansen Group does something to my breathing. A specific tightening, low in the sternum, like a door I bricked over, reminding me it was always there. I've trained myself to respond to that particular tightening the way a doctor responds to a patient's pain. With professional observation rather than personal reaction, I observe it. I file it. I pick up the folder. I read what is in those books. Hansung Group's financials are elegant. That is the first thing I notice. Not the numbers themselves, but the architecture, the way revenue streams nest inside each other like Russian dolls, each layer legitimate enough to satisfy any surface audit. But underneath the consulting fees and property management income, there is a recurring pattern, micro-transfers, never more than $4,000 cycling through 17 shell entities before landing in a single holding account in Macau. I recognize the structure. I've seen it once before. I was paid to build something nearly identical, a lifetime ago, before I understood what I was building it for. That is what I don't tell Marcus. What I tell him is yes. What I don't tell him is that I spent 5 years getting my forensic accounting certification specifically so that someday, if I have to, I can walk back into the world I fled and understand it well enough to survive it. I just don't expect someday to arrive with a 48-hour deadline and a one-way ticket to Los Angeles with my daughter. Zara takes the news about LA the way she takes most things, with terrifying enthusiasm. She is 5. She doesn't know what LA means to her mother. She only knows it has the ocean and she wants to collect shells. I let her collect shells on our first afternoon. I I watch the Pacific like it owes me an apology and think about the particular mathematics of choices made in fear. Leave everything you love to keep her safe, or stay and teach her what danger looks like up close. I chose the former. I am still not entirely certain I chose right. Zara collects 7 shells in 40 minutes, narrates the discovery of each one, and at some point during shell number 4 begins singing a song she is making up as she goes, about a mermaid who is also a scientist. I sit on the sand and watch her and think, this is what I built. This morning-bright, shell-collecting, song-inventing creature is the architecture of every hard choice I ever made. I also think she deserves to know where half of her architecture came from. I have been not thinking that second thought for 5 years, and the Pacific is not interested in pretending it isn't true. Hansen Group's LA headquarters occupy a glass tower in Koreatown, 22 stories of polished steel that reflect the city back at itself without giving anything away. I have legitimate cover. Marcus has arranged a consulting contract, 3 weeks for an independent financial review. I am supposed to be invisible. I am in the lobby on my 4th day waiting for my temporary access card when I see him. Han Jae-won doesn't walk into rooms, he arrives in them. There is a quality to his movement I have never been able to properly name, like the space around him adjusts rather than the reverse. He is in a charcoal suit, no tie, phone in one hand, a conversation with 2 men pulling part of his attention. He hasn't seen me yet. 4 seconds. My brain does what it always does. Catalogs. He is older. 6 years older. The gray at his temples new, the line between his brows deeper. He is also, I hate myself for noticing, more. More contained, more certain. Like the years have compressed him into something harder and cleaner, and God help anyone standing in the path of that. I think about the 23-year-old version of me that loved this man without the vocabulary to understand what she was loving. She had cataloged him the same way, taking inventory of a force of nature before deciding, incorrectly, that she could weather it indefinitely. I am not 23 anymore. I have spent 6 years building exactly the vocabulary she lacked. Standing in this lobby, I discover that vocabulary and love are not the same currency. My chest does not consult my education. He looks up. I don't run. Maybe because running would be worse. Maybe because some starved part of me wants him to see me. His eyes find mine across the lobby. Nothing on his face changes. That is the terrifying part. Jae-won's stillness isn't calm. It's calculation. In 2 seconds, I watch him do exactly what I am doing. Catalog, register, decide. Then he looks back at his phone and keeps walking. I exhale. My hands are shaking. I press them flat against my thighs and will them steady. He doesn't expose me, doesn't call security. Walks to the elevator and disappears upward, and I stand in that lobby for another 30 seconds wondering if I've imagined the entire exchange, or if Han Jae-won has just decided, for reasons entirely his own, to let me keep my cover. By 5 o'clock, I have my answer, a text from an unknown number. Conference room 18C, 6 p.m. Come alone. I come alone. He's already at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Koreatown's grid of evening lights, hands clasped behind his back. The room is empty except for us, no bodyguards. Either a gesture of trust or a demonstration that he doesn't need them to handle me. Amara Washington, he says without turning. Forensic accountant. You've been in my books for 4 days. I've been in your lobby for 4 days. I haven't been given access to your books yet. He turns. The city light cuts across his face at an angle that does nothing to soften it. You built the Macau structure. You know where the seams are. Someone sent you back because of that. A pause. Who? I hold his gaze. You know I can't answer that. Something shifts in his expression, not softening, but recognition, like he expected exactly this response and is filing it. You left without a word. 6 years. That's not why I'm here. I know. He turns back to the window. I haven't decided what to do about your presence yet. Until I do, keep working. Don't go below the B2 level. Don't speak to Kim Dae-hyun. That last instruction stops me. Why? Because I said so. A pause. Consider it a professional courtesy. The silence between us has a temperature. It is not hostile. That would be easier, actually. It is the specific temperature of two people standing in the same room as a history neither of them is allowed to name yet. I make myself hold it. I have learned, in 6 years of doing difficult things, that the most important skill is not cleverness or precision, but the ability to occupy discomfort without flinching. I occupy it. I nod once. I leave. I leave with more questions than I entered with and the electric unease of proximity to the one person who can unravel everything I've built. I don't yet realize he has just saved my life. Kim Dae-hyun is Jae-won's head of security. 7 years embedded, trusted beyond question. He is also the one who helped me escape 6 years ago, slipped me a burner phone, a car, an address in Portland. I thought it was kindness. I am still thinking that when I sit across from him at the welcome lunch 2 days later and notice the first wrong thing. His phone is face down. Everyone else's is face up, on the table, in pockets, some people checking them during the meal. Dae-hyun's lies flat against the lacquered tabletop, face to the wood. When my coffee cup tips and my hand shoots out to catch it, the automatic reflex of everyone at the table is to glance at their phones. An instinct making sure nothing was disturbed. Dae-hyun doesn't glance down. He glances at me, not at the phone, at my hands, specifically, my hands, which have just moved faster than expected across the table. I file it, keep smiling, eat my japchae, and think about why a head of security would need to ensure I haven't seen his screen. Think about what would be on that screen that couldn't survive a forensic accountant's glance. If you've ever had that specific chill, the one where something small is wrong and you can't name why, but every instinct is screaming, "Watch this." You know exactly what I feel sitting at that table. I watch. Access to Hansung Group's books comes on day 6, and they are, as I expected, beautiful and deeply wrong. The Macau pipeline I built has been modified, subtly, deliberately, by someone who studied my architecture the way a forger studies brushwork. Not quite my construction, but imitating it, like a musician playing someone else's composition with slightly wrong fingering. The rhythm is off in small ways that only the original composer would catch. The modifications create a secondary routing path I never designed, funneling a separate stream of capital through a real estate holding entity called Baekdu LLC. I spend 2 days mapping Baekdu. It appears nowhere in Hansung's surface records. Below the surface, it processes approximately $11 million annually. The destination resolves into nothing I recognize, until I look at the transfer timing, the shell layer structure, the jurisdiction choices. Then I recognize the pattern, even if I don't yet recognize the destination. On the 3rd day, I bring it to Jae-won. He's at his desk when I enter the 20th floor office, floor-to-ceiling glass, a view of the city that feels like a statement about control. He doesn't perform attention. He finishes the paragraph he is reading, sets the paper aside, and gives me his full focus. No theater, just presence. Baekdu LLC, I say, setting my analysis on his desk. He looks at it. 30 seconds of silence. Then, "Where did you find this?" Layer 4 of the income consolidation. Whoever added it knew your existing structure well enough to make it nearly invisible. If I hadn't built the original, I wouldn't have seen it. He picks up the page. His eyes move quickly and systematically, reading the way people read when they already understand numbers and don't need to learn them. You're saying someone inside this organization is running a secondary channel. I'm saying someone who knows your financials intimately is doing it. This level of access belongs to fewer than 6 people in this building. The stillness that settles over him is different from his usual composure. It is the stillness of a man confirming something he suspected but needed proof of. When did this start? I indicate a line. Based on transaction patterns, approximately 14 months ago. He sets the page down, looks at me in a way that makes the air shift. How did you see this when 3 other auditors didn't? They were looking at what was there. I was looking for what shouldn't be. A long quiet. The city hums its constant, indifferent frequency below us. Then, "I owe you for this, Amara. I pay my debts." I hear the old version of that sentence fold inside the new one. "Consider it part of the contract." "No." He holds my gaze. "This is personal. I pay my debts personally." That evening, I returned to the Silver Lake apartment. 2 bedrooms, unremarkable, a jade plant on the sill that Zara has named Gerald. She's at the kitchen table drawing, dark curls loose around her face, tongue between her teeth in deep concentration. "The drawing is," she explains without looking up, "a man who is very sad but doesn't know he's sad yet." I sit beside her. "Who is it?" "I don't know." She considers the page. "I see him sometimes when I'm sleeping. He's always by himself." The figure has no face, just a shape, alone on what might be a bench, surrounded by what might be leaves. My chest does something complicated. I look at the drawing for a long time. Children are supposed to dream of ordinary things. Playgrounds, animals, cartoons, the particular anxieties of kindergarten social politics. They are not supposed to dream recurring images of lonely men on park benches and carry those images into waking life with the calm certainty of a fact. I have seen Zara's certainty before. In the set of her jaw when she has decided something is true, in the quality of attention she gives a room full of strangers, already sorting for what most 5-year-olds won't register for another decade. I know where that quality comes from. I am looking at it on a piece of paper and feeling what it means to have kept these 2 people from each other, drawn by some instrument I can't explain, reaching across the distance I put between them. "Maybe he just needs a friend," I say. "Maybe." She adds more lines around the shape. "I think I know him, Mama. I just can't remember from where." I don't sleep that night. The next morning, I bring Zara to Griffith Park. It is supposed to be safe. 11 a.m. on a Tuesday. Joggers, families, dogs on leashes, everything normal and daytime and unglamorous. I set up on a bench with my laptop and let Zara run toward the fountain 30 feet ahead. The Hansung files are open on my screen. I am deep in the Baekdu Trail when the specific quality of the air shifts. That atmospheric pressure drop that means a variable has just changed. I look up. Zara has stopped running. She's standing 15 feet from a bench I hadn't clocked until this moment, because the man on it has been sitting with a stillness so complete he read as landscape rather than person. Now he reads as the single most dangerous variable in a 20-mile radius. I do not immediately understand what I am seeing. That is the terrifying thing about recognition, when you have trained yourself not to recognize. The brain slows down, introduces static, buys itself 3 extra seconds of denial. I use those 3 seconds to close my laptop. Then the denial clears and I see him whole. The cut of the jacket, the angle of the jaw, the particular quality of stillness that belongs to a man who has never, once in his life, needed to prove anything to anyone. My heart does not accelerate. It does something worse. It goes very quiet. The way rooms go quiet when someone important enters, and all of my careful architecture responds to him the same way it always did, like he is the organizing principle and everything else is arrangement. Han Jae-won is alone. No visible detail, no Koreatown tower, no controlled environment. A park bench, a Tuesday, the open sky. Men like him don't do solitude. They do calculated appearances and layered security. A bench surrounded by ordinary families is neither. He looks, I search for the word and fail, worn. Tired in a way that has nothing to do with sleep. Zara takes 3 steps toward him. I am already closing the laptop, already calculating, call out and draw attention to both of us, or run and make a scene, or do nothing and watch my daughter walk up to her father without knowing what she is doing. None of these are good options. I am already moving, already measuring the distance in heartbeats when Zara glances back over her shoulder at me, the checking glance, her habit of confirming I'm still there, and then turns back to the man on the bench. She walks up to him with the fearlessness of a child who has never been given reason to understand what men like him are. She leans close to his ear. The words carry across the distance, clear as water in April air. "I saw you in my dreams." Jaewon goes absolutely still. I cover the distance in 10 steps that feel like 10 years. By the time I reach them, he has turned to look at Zara, and the expression on his face is the most unguarded thing I have seen from him in 6 years. Plus, this entire week. Not recognition exactly. Something rawer than that. The look of a man who feels a door open in a wall he was certain had no doors. Jaewon. He looks up at me. The openness contracts, not back to his mask, but into something harder to read. His gaze moves from my face to Zara's and back, and I watch him do the math. She has my coloring, my build, the shape of my eyes, but she carries his jawline, his posture, the particular quality of his stillness, the way she walked across open ground toward a dangerous stranger without flinching. That is not something she learned from me. Zara, I say, come stand with Mama, please. Zara, who is 5 and constitutionally impervious to subtext, turns to Jaewon instead. Are you sad because you're lonely, or sad because something bad happened? He looks at my daughter for a long moment, then very quietly, I'm not sure. I dream about you, she says, with 5-year-old earnestness that bypasses every defense in the universe. You're always by yourself. I think you need somebody. Zara. I put my hand on her shoulder. To Jaewon. I'm sorry. She talks to everyone. Does she? Not a question. He rises from the bench in a single fluid motion that makes his 2 flanking security men, I find them now, at distance, minutely adjust. He is looking at me with something I haven't seen from him this week, rawness that has no strategy around it. Walk with me. He says it the way he says everything. Quiet, certain, leaving no grammatical space for refusal. I lift Zara and settle her on my hip, and we walk. 2 minutes of silence that feel considerably longer. Jaewon's security maintains their distance. Zara watches him with open curiosity and eventually, apparently completing some internal assessment, rests her cheek on my shoulder and closes her eyes. The park breathes around us. Dogs bark somewhere distant. The city exists in its usual indifferent enormity. How old is she? He finally asks. My throat tightens. 5. He absorbs this. Does the math I've been dreading since I accepted this assignment. When you left. His voice is very controlled. You knew. Yes. The word falls between us like a stone into still water. I watch the ripples cross his face, barely visible and entirely devastating. Why? I've rehearsed 1,000 versions of this answer across 5 years. Every single version dissolves. Because I watched you execute a man in your parking garage, because I was 23 and pregnant and terrified, and I believed if I stayed, your world would consume us both. I keep my eyes forward. I'm not telling you that was right. I'm telling you it was true. He is silent a long time. The silence has a specific weight, the weight of an accusation he is not making, which is somehow heavier than an accusation would be. Jaewon has never been a man who performs. He feels things the way the earth feels seismic pressure, without announcing it, over long periods, until the moment when everything shifts. I can feel him shifting now beside me. I have been on the other side of his wrath before, in smaller forms, and I know what it looks like. This is not wrath. This is something I have no prior model for, and that terrifies me more. Her name, he finally says, Zara. Another silence. Then, she looks like both of us. I know. He stops walking. I stop because I don't have a choice. His stillness has always had gravity. He turns to look at Zara, now fully asleep on my shoulder, curls soft against my neck. Something moves across his face that I have no category for. All the categories I built for Han Jae-won, dangerous, strategic, untouchable, are completely inadequate for this moment. He reaches out. His hand hovers near her hair for a long second. Then he pulls it back. She's mine, he says. Not possessively. It sounds like a man pressing his fingers to a wound and finding it much larger than he thought. Yes, I say, if you've ever watched someone you've hurt, absorb the full shape of that hurt, not with rage, but with a grief so quiet it is worse than rage. You know what the next 10 seconds feel like. I've spent 5 years telling myself I made the only available choice. Standing in that park with his daughter asleep on my shoulder, I feel the first real crack in that certainty. You're working for a task force, he says. Yes. They sent you back here without knowing the connection. Yes. And Dae-hyun, he stops. Something in his voice on that name makes my skin tighten. What about Dae-hyun? He looks at me sharply. What do you know? Nothing provable yet, but his phone is always face down when I'm near, and I've timed the security rotation. There's a 4-minute gap at 9 p.m. that repeats exactly. Scheduled. Someone is engineering a window. His jaw tightens. How long have you suspected? Since the welcome lunch. I didn't come to you because I had no proof. And now? Now I have the beginning of a pattern, and Dae-hyun's secondary channel connects to something much larger than an inside job. I look at him steadily. Whatever is coming, it's been 14 months in construction and $11 million in funding. That's not a defection. That's a siege. Jaewon says something quiet in Korean. I don't know. Then, go back to your apartment. Don't return to the office today. I'll send someone you can trust. How will I know who to trust? He looks at me with the full weight of everything unsaid between us. They'll know about the bench today. He turns and walks back toward his security. I stand holding our sleeping daughter with my heart doing something structurally unsound, and think about what it means to be back in the orbit of a man who has always been both the most dangerous and the most certain thing I've ever known. The proof assembles itself faster than I expect because I've been unknowingly building toward it for 3 days. That evening, working at the kitchen table after Zara is asleep, I run the Baekdu LLC routing through every cipher pattern in my 7 years of forensic files. On the 4th attempt, it resolves. The cipher is a modified version of something I encountered in graduate school, a proprietary financial obfuscation system developed by a shell company out of Busan. I pull the original case study from my secure archive. The Busan company had documented ties to Park Sung-ho's syndicate. Park Sung-ho, Jaewon's oldest and most patient rival, a man whose methodology is geological, years of slow preparation, then a single strike. He has tried twice to absorb Hansung Group and failed both times. I know his operational signature the way I know my own handwriting. Careful, layered, nothing visible until everything is already in position. I cross-reference for 40 minutes. Baekdu LLC was incorporated through a law firm that appears 4 times in Park Sung-ho's known operational history. The $11 million has been moving in fragments toward an account structure I recognize as pre-acquisition staging. Not an assassination, a takeover. Park plans to hollow Hansung Group from inside, use Dae-hyun to manufacture enough internal chaos and destroyed trust that the organization collapses, then absorb the pieces. Dae-hyun has been embedded for 7 years. This has been a 7-year operation. I am reaching for my phone when the knock comes. Soft. 3 specific beats. I check the peephole. Lee Ji-young, Jaewon's personal assistant, holding a paper coffee cup and looking directly at the peephole with the calm efficiency of someone who has managed impossible situations for a living. He said to tell you about the bench, she says when I open the door. I let her in. She sits at my table, listens without expression while I explain everything. Baekdu, Park, the cipher, the 14-month timeline, and when I finish, she says simply, he'll want to see this tonight. I know. I hesitate. Zara. I'll stay with her. No negotiation in it. She asked about my earrings when I walked in. She'll be fine. Of course she did. Ji-young. Was Dae-hyun on surveillance rotation this morning? In the park? Her expression shifts. Barely, but I'm watching for exactly that. Yes. My stomach drops. Then he knows I was there. He knows Jaewon saw us. Yes. She's already reaching for her phone. And if Park Sung-ho knows his asset has been identified, he compresses the timeline. I am on my feet, already calculating. We have hours, not days. I've done enough work at the edge of this world to know what it means when a 7-year operation loses its cover. Park Sung-ho won't sit still. He'll deploy every piece he has as fast as possible before Jaewon can neutralize them. Zara is asleep down the hall, her drawing crumpled under one small fist, dreaming whatever 5-year-olds dream. She has no idea that the man who helped her mother escape to safety is the same man who engineered her mother's return. That she walked into Griffith Park this morning and whispered a dream into the ear of the most dangerous man in Los Angeles. And by doing so, she may have started the clock on something none of us can stop. If you've ever realized in a single cold instant that every choice you thought you made freely was actually someone else's move in a game you didn't know you were playing, what do you do with that? Do you fold or do you pay attention? I do what I have always done. I pay attention. Jaewon's response to my evidence is 3 seconds of absolute stillness, and then a single word directed at Ji-young, Gaja, that sets the next 6 hours in motion. He comes to the apartment himself. That tells me everything. The people he would normally use to receive this kind of intelligence are no longer categorically trusted. It is just him, Ji-young, and a man I don't know, named Park Sung-woo, who moves like former special forces and has the permanent expression of someone calculating angles. Jaewon spreads my analysis across my kitchen table and reads in silence for 2 minutes. Then, "You said 14 months. The monthly security review I can never fully reconcile, the one that keeps showing clean when it shouldn't, also started 14 months ago." His jaw tightens. He's been filing false threat assessments. Every time Park Sung-ho moved against us, Dae-hyun buried the advance intelligence. "Your threat detection was compromised at the source," I say. "You couldn't see it coming because the system reporting danger was the danger." 7 years. Quietly. Not anger. Something more precise and more devastating than anger. He stood at my father's funeral. He drove my mother home from the hospital after her surgery last winter. I don't offer comfort. There is nothing useful to say that isn't an insult to the weight of it. "Why?" he asks, and the word carries the human question inside the strategic one. What makes a man do this? Park Sung-ho specializes in leverage, I say carefully. If he turned Dae-hyun from the outside, has Dae-hyun's family been fully verified recently? His younger brother? Jaewon turns to Sung-woo. 3 seconds of unspoken communication. Sung-woo steps out. I watch Jaewon stand very still in my kitchen while our daughter sleeps down the hall, and I think about what it costs to maintain honor in a world that uses honor as a weapon against you. Sung-woo's call comes in 12 minutes. Dae-hyun's younger brother has been held at a Park Sung-ho property in Alhambra for 8 months. A quiet disappearance. Dae-hyun reported him as having moved abroad for work. Jaewon closes his eyes for exactly 1 second. When he opens them, the grief I saw at the park bench has been compressed into something colder and more operational. He's not our enemy. He's their hostage. The brother first, I say. Extract him. Then Dae-hyun comes in on his own terms, with the chance to come clean before confrontation. I hold his gaze. You said you pay your debts. Dae-hyun has been paying one he didn't choose. That matters. Jaewon looks at me for a long moment. You're telling me how to handle my people. I'm telling you what honor looks like from outside when it's done correctly. There's a difference between a man who betrayed you and a man who was broken, trying to protect someone he loves. I don't look away. You know the difference. You've always known the difference. The silence stretches. One hyagi ganchalha, he says quietly, dangerously perceptive. Not a complaint, an acknowledgement of something he has been deciding about me for days. Dae-hyun comes in at 3 a.m. Sung-woo's team has located and extracted his brother from the Alhambra property. Alive, frightened, shaken but unhurt. Dae-hyun sits across from Jaewon with red eyes and hands that won't quite stop trembling, and he dismantles 8 months of operational betrayal in 20 minutes of brutal honesty. Every piece of intelligence fed to Park, every security gap manufactured, every false threat assessment filed clean. He had been minimizing damage, giving Sung-ho fragments to keep his brother alive while protecting Hansung's most critical assets. An impossible balance, and it has been tearing him apart from the inside. When he finishes, the room is very quiet. I sit apart from the two of them, outside the formal circle of this reckoning, aware that I am witnessing something that most people in Jae-won's world will never witness. This is not power performing itself. This is a man who built something significant out of difficult materials, deciding in real time what that thing is actually worth, who it protects, what it demands, what lines define it. Every difficult choice has a cost, and you don't always know what the currency is until the moment of transaction. Jae-won is learning the price of loyalty right now, in a small room at 3 a.m, and he is paying it with the same stillness he brings to everything. Jae-won says, "감사합니다," for protecting as much as you could. Daehyun looks up with the expression of a man who expected execution and received something he has no category for. "Your brother is in the next room," Jae-won says. "Go." Park Sung-ho gets word of Daehyun's defection at 4 a.m. and does exactly what I predicted. He moves. The call reaches Ji-young's line at 4:23, a voice she doesn't recognize. "Tell Han Jae-won we have his daughter." I know exactly what happens to my face in that moment because I see it reflected in Jae-won's expression, the cold that passes through a body when its worst fear finishes its sentence out loud. I am already moving toward Zara's room when Jae-won catches my arm. "She's here." His voice is controlled with effort. "That's a test. He wants confirmation. Is the woman from the park her mother? Is she leverage?" I stop, force my brain back into operation. He is right. If Sung-ho actually had Zara, he wouldn't announce it. He would wait until he could deploy the information at maximum damage. This call is intelligence gathering, confirming the connection, measuring Jae-won's reaction. "He doesn't have her," I say. "Not yet." Jae-won releases my arm, but he knows she exists. He knows her face. He knows she's leverage. I go to Zara's room anyway, stand in the doorway for 3 seconds watching her breathe, her drawing of the man without a face crumpled under one small fist. She is exactly where I left her, exactly as safe as a child can be in a world where her existence has just become a tactical asset in someone else's war. Then I go back to the table. "Where does he stage when he needs to move fast?" I ask. "Not the visible infrastructure. That's already burned. His secondary properties, the ones built for operational compression." Jae-won watches me. "You've been researching him." "For 4 weeks, I flagged 3 properties that appear in the Baekdu routing, one in Koreatown, one in El Monte, one in Torrance. Torrance has the best vehicle access and the only verified electrical capacity for a command infrastructure." He studies the addresses I've pulled up. "El Monte," he says. "The Torrance property is a ghost. I own it under a subsidiary. He would know to avoid it. El Monte is adjacent to 3 freeway systems. Better for rapid extraction." I look at him. "You knew about the Torrance property and you let me find it anyway." "I wanted to see if you'd find the right answer or the convenient one." He almost lets a half smile reach his expression. "You found the right one. So we agree. El Monte. We agree." What follows is not elegant. It is a coordinated entry at 5:40 a.m. into a commercial property in El Monte. 6 of Jae-won's most trusted people, plus 1 forensic accountant, who has no operational reason to be there, except that she is the one who decoded the financial architecture, who found the 4-minute operational window in Park's scheduling rotation, who realized 2 hours ago, going back through the Baekdu timestamps, that the gap wasn't Daehyun's at all. It was Park's own window, built into his operational template for the last 14 months. A compulsive pattern, 4 minutes, every night at 9 p.m., when his operations manager rotated positions. Park ran a tight ship, and tight ships run on habit, and habits leave footprints in transaction timestamps if you know how to read them. I tell Jae-won. He adjusts the entry time by 8 minutes, hitting the window on the rotation's open side. The operation runs 3 minutes faster than planned. Park Sung-ho is not at El Monte. He is halfway to Van Nuys Airport. Not running, repositioning, which is what strategists do when the board shifts. His driver pulls over 2 miles from the terminal, surrounded by people who have been ahead of every decision Sung-ho has made since Daehyun stopped feeding him intelligence. surrounded by people who knew where he would go before he went there, because I mapped his infrastructure, and Jae-won understood his psychology, and the two of us working together turned out to be considerably more than the sum of the parts. I am still at El Monte, working through the operational documents Park's team left behind, when Jae-won comes to stand beside me. "It's over," he says. "The Seungho threat is over," I say without looking up. "Your financial structure is still compromised and needs a full rebuild from B2 upward. That's a minimum 6-month project." "Are you offering to do it?" I look up at him then. He is standing closer than strategy requires, close enough that I can smell the long night on him, gunpowder and expensive fabric, and something that has always been just him, the specific combination I spent 5 years trying to forget. He looks tired in a way he is finally allowing himself to show. He looks like the man I loved at 23, before I understood the full shape of what I was loving, and also like something more than that man. Something the years have made harder and more honest simultaneously. There's a particular moment in my experience when the story you have been telling yourself about your own choices runs out of road. I have told myself a clean story for 5 years. I ran because I had to. I built a life because Zara deserved one. I survived because survival was the only available metric. Standing here in the gray-blue light of an El Monte warehouse at dawn, with his daughter's drawing still folded in my jacket pocket and the smell of a long night wearing on both of us, I find the end of that story. What I feel at the end of it is not regret. Regret would be too simple, too neat. It is more like finally turning to face the room I have been leaving in my peripheral vision for 6 years and discovering it is much larger than the small, dark thing I made it into when I ran. I'm saying I'm the only person qualified to rebuild it. I say carefully, that's not the same as offering. What would constitute an offer? The city is beginning to lighten outside the industrial windows, that specific pre-dawn gray that arrives in Los Angeles before the pink does, as if the sky is deciding whether to bother being beautiful. You tell me what Zara's world looks like if I stay, not what you want, what she actually gets. He is quiet for a long time. Safety, he says finally. Stability. A father who already understands things about her that no one taught him because she walked up to him in a park and told him the truth before anyone had a chance to complicate it. He pauses. She told me I was sad but didn't know it yet. She was right. She's 5. She doesn't know what she knows. She knew enough. He looks at me with something that is neither strategy nor demand, something rawer and more difficult than either. I'm not asking you to trust this world. I'm asking you to trust that I understand what I'm building and who I'm building it around. Outside, the sky makes its decision and goes pink at the edges. 3 weeks later, I file my report to Marcus Webb. The report documents the Baekdu LLC operation in complete detail, the full financial architecture of Park Seung-ho's 14-month infiltration campaign, the operational breakdown that followed his network's collapse. It is thorough. It is accurate. It contains nothing about Hansen Group's internal financial structure below B2, nothing that Jae-won and I have not explicitly agreed I can include. Marcus calls 12 minutes after receiving it. "You've redacted everything from B2 downward," he says. "The B2 structure is being rebuilt under my direct supervision. When it's compliant, you'll have full access for review." A pause. "That sounds like you're staying." "That sounds like I'm negotiating the terms of a legitimate ongoing engagement." I look out the Silver Lake window at the jade plant Zara named Gerald. 2 different things. Amara, you understand what you're adjacent to. I understand what I'm building, I say. That's different from what I'm adjacent to. He doesn't like it. He also knows that the report I've delivered is 3 times more operationally useful than anything 3 previous auditors produced, and that Park Seung-ho's network is currently being dismantled across 2 federal agencies and an Interpol subunit specifically, because I found a cipher buried in a financial structure most analysts would have filed clean and walked away from. He says he'll be in touch. He will be. I know that. But so will I. Jay Wan comes by that evening. He does this now, arrives with no announcement and stays for dinner, and Zara explains her drawings to him with the total earnestness of a child who decided, without any adult intervention whatsoever, that this person is hers. He listens to every drawing. He asks the questions I wouldn't have thought to ask. Which color is her favorite today specifically? Whether the Stegosaurus is underrated? Why Gerald the jade plant looks happy when she talks to him, but normal when anyone else does? Last week, Zara climbed into his lap while he was mid-sentence explaining something about the rebuilt corporate structure, and he stopped talking. Just stopped. Sat very still with our daughter asleep against his chest, one hand resting carefully on her back, looking at her the way you look at something that arrived from a direction you weren't watching and that you are only now beginning to understand. He looked up and found me watching. "I would have protected her," he said quietly. "If you'd stayed. I need you to know that." "I know." I held his gaze across the kitchen table, across 6 years and 3 weeks of compressed revelation and the particular cost of choices made in terror versus choices made with open eyes. "I also know I didn't stay. That's mine to carry." "Ours," he said. The word landed somewhere undefended. I made myself hold his gaze, which turned out to be its own specific kind of courage. We stayed like that for a moment. The three of us, the sleeping child, the kitchen's ordinary light, the city doing its indifferent thing beyond the window. And I thought about what it takes to reassemble something that has been broken not by hatred, but by fear. Fear is actually harder to undo than hatred. Hatred leaves clear edges. Fear leaves questions, and questions compound across years, and by the time you get to the other side of them, you find a version of yourself you only half recognize. I found myself, these last 3 weeks, half recognizing something. It might be the beginning of trust. It might be something further along that road. I am not in a hurry to name it. Some things need to arrive in their own time without being declared into existence prematurely. "She has your stillness," I said. "It's alarming in a 5-year-old. Something moved through his expression. Complicated, warm, still finding its shape. "She walked up to me in a public park and told me she saw me in her dreams." He looked down at her. "She has your courage." "Her own courage," I said. "She came that way." He considered this. "Yes," he said quietly. "She did." Gerald the jade plant sits on the windowsill. The Pacific is visible on clear days if you stand on the balcony and look at exactly the right angle. The city does its perpetual impersonation of a place that doesn't notice the strange and dangerous things happening in its midst. The forensic accountant and the Mafia boss and their daughter who dreamed of fathers before she knew she had one. All 3 of them building something from pieces that should never have been separated. G. Young messages at 9 p.m. Park's remaining network moving east. Chicago infrastructure activated. 3 sub-lieutenants asking who to report to now. Jay Wan reads it and looks at me. "That's a problem for tomorrow," I say. "Tonight," he says. "But tomorrow you're going to tell me what you see in the Chicago financials, because I'm certain you already ran them." I ran them at 2 a.m. 4 days ago, just in case. "That," I say, "is going to cost you something. Name it." I think about 23-year-old Amara running from a parking garage in the middle of the night with a secret she was already terrified of. I think about the 5 years she spent building armor out of certifications and geographic distance, and the practice skill of convincing herself she'd made the only available choice. I think about a little girl drawing a man without a face and knowing, somehow in whatever way 5-year-olds know things, that she already loved him. I also think for the first time in a long time about what it feels like to stop running, not to have been caught. There's a difference. Running ends in 2 ways. Someone catches you or you decide to stop. I have spent 6 years treating those 2 endings as identical. Standing here in a Silver Lake kitchen with a man who could have ended me a dozen times in a dozen clean ways over the past 3 weeks and instead said hours. I understand at last that they are not the same at all. One ending is a wall, the other is a door. You choose which kind you want to arrive at. I am choosing. Tell her, I say, when she's ready, when you think she can hold it. Tell her she walked up to her father in a park and sat down like she already knew who he was. I look at him steadily. Tell her she was right. He looks at me for a long time. "Joseonghamnida," he says softly, "for everything unspoken, for the years and the cost of them, for the particular mathematics of having been afraid and the harder mathematics of choosing not to be afraid anymore." "Not yet," I tell him. "We're getting there." If you've ever had to walk back into the life you ran from, knowing that everything you protected by leaving is also everything you owe by returning, what would you do? I had 3 weeks, a daughter who dreamed truths no one taught her, and a mafia boss who stopped mid-sentence to hold a sleeping child and forgot, for a moment, that he was dangerous. My choice was to stay and rebuild something I spent years dismantling. Jaewon says the Chicago network is going to move faster than we think. I don't know yet if what we're building here is stronger than what's coming east, but Zara drew him a picture last night, this time with a face, and put it on the refrigerator without asking anyone's permission. I think that counts for something. I think that counts for everything.